Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And we've got a really cool blues player with us today with Peter Parcek. I want to say a quick shout out and thank you to Patty DeVries for hooking us up. Thank you, Patty. You're the best young lady. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe to subscribe to the audio and video. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and that little emoji that looks like a bell. That helps us out with the YouTube recommendations, and thanks very much for that. All right, quickly on Peter Parcek. He moved to London after high school, and he'd see guys like Clapton, Beck, and Peter Green playing in local clubs. We'll talk about that because that must have been great. He joined a band as a singer and a harmonica player and even played on the same bill as Pink Floyd one night. We'll definitely talk about that. Unfortunately, Peter had to return to the States, but once he got back here, he got switched on and he was listening to great American blues artists and concerts like Muddy Waters, Albert King, Jimi Hendrix, B.B. King, Albert Collins, and Buddy Guy. And he would sit up as close as possible so he could see exactly what they were doing on guitar, and it was an amazing education. Moved to Massachusetts, became obsessed with guitar, started playing 8 to 10 hours a day, and he joined his first serious band, which was called out of Boston. They were called 9 Below Zero. And this led to Peter playing on recordings for piano legend Pinetop Perkins and a stint as Pinetop's touring band leader. Peter's released 4 solo records, including his most recent one called Mississippi Suitcase, and we'll talk about that. Man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
Brother, thank you for having me, and I'm glad you're healthy again. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Likewise. All right. So I read that you moved to London right after you graduated high school.
Yeah.
Where were you living before that, and what prompted that move, and like why London? That's pretty ballsy, man. That's awesome.
Well, I was living in Connecticut, and just by way of framing this, my dad had been in the Marines and my mom had been in the Navy. And I don't know if you remember that time block, but that was when Vietnam was occurring.
Yeah, it's a little before. I'm 57, so I'm on the edge of that.
A little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had made a determination that I didn't feel good about that particular war and that I wasn't going to go.
Good for you.
Well, but it complicated things quite a bit in my family since
both your parents are in the service.
Yeah, and my dad particularly. He wasn't going for that at all. So we had, unfortunately, a falling out for quite a while over it. But, you know, the options at that time weren't great. It was kind of Canada, jail. I mean, I like Canada. I thought about Canada. Yeah, I thought about Canada. And what we hoped was that, and I think some of our leaders were saying, we think we can wrap this conflict up. You know, we can end it. Didn't turn out that way, unfortunately. But so my mom was working teaching school, and she had a friend whose husband was a businessman, an international businessman. And they had an apartment in London. And so my mom began talking with this very nice lady, and she said, well, gee, why don't you, let me check with Jim, that was her husband. Maybe he could just go over there for a little while. This thing could be resolved and he can come back. You know, that was the thought.
What's serendipity to like?
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought, all of that sounds great to me. I'm ready to go. And I had already sort of missed almost a year of high school for some other reason, which is off the subject of what we're talking about. But a
lot of drama when you're a kid there, Peter.
Yeah, exactly. You know how that is. So, you know, I was rebellious, and I still am, but I was quite rebellious. Anyway, so this lady said, yeah, you can use our place, at least for a while. And it turned out their place was on Montague Square. And people that lived in Montague Square at various times were Ringo Starr, Jimi Hendrix, Right. So, I mean, it was ridiculous. I had no idea that that's what it was going to be. And so I got acclimated. I started going to clubs, hearing music. I played guitar, but I was really insecure about it. And hearing some of those folks over there made me even more insecure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But I could play harp, reasonably well. And I was American, which was kind of, it was kind of cachet.
Oh, my wife's from England, so I've gone over there, and you're
yeah.
I love your accent. I'm like, man, you're the only person in 40 years ever said that, but okay, so I get it. Yeah, I get it.
So I hooked up with some people, and there were some amazing players that I was lucky to interact with. These are not the quote unquote super famous Greens, but Gary and Jeff Green. Gary later played in Gentle Giant.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
Amazing guitar player. He and his brother Jeff would play Hideaway together. They would harmonize it, and they would both play it behind their head.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just like, it was ridiculous in the best way. And they were total sweethearts, great people. And there was another guy named Stan Cross who played a little more like Buddy Guy. And Stan and I got to be really good friends. And so we played together in a band it was Stan, Jeff Green, Jim, I can't remember Jim's last name, the drummer, and Ronnie, I think was the bass player. And we got really lucky because it was that period where it was the blues boom. So anything that was pretty good got a lot more attention.
You must have had women dripping off you because you're American too, man.
I can't go into that right now.
That's a yes.
Can't go into it right.
Of course.
Yes. And so I was playing harp and singing. These two great guitar players were playing. And again, a lot of it was just timing. And the girlfriend of this guy we knew who was about to break big worked in an agency. And so that agency got all kinds of gigs. And not all of them were, big enough for this guy who was about to break big, but they were, golden to us. Because we were just trying to gig. So I actually ended up playing at the Marquee. I mean, I had no business playing there, really, but ended up playing there, opening for somebody. And it wasn't at the Marquee, but that was how the Pink Floyd thing came about. It was some kind of party. I remember that Syd Barrett had that mirror guitar, and they weren't very well known at the point at which we opened for them. So
Gilmore is not in the band yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay,
this was Syd Barrett.
Syd Barrett, pre-Gilmore, Syd Barrett.
And it was everything that you've heard. I mean, it was loud. It was incredibly creative. It was very much on the edge.
Light show? They had the light show going?
Oh, yeah, but it wasn't anywhere near what it would become later.
Wow.
Nowhere near what it became later, but it was, and
man, what an opportunity to see, like,
it was incredible.
History being made, basically.
So it was really, a lot of it was luck, and the fact that I was actually choosing not to play guitar was lucky, because these folks were all better than I was, to a man or to a woman. They were better than I was. So, but, I didn't factor in the necessity of a work permit.
Oh.
That is, at least at the time, I don't know if it's still true, but it was crucial. And we were gigging a lot. I mean, not for really any money to speak of, but in terms of exposure. I mean, I know R.L. Burnside said, people die of exposure, but but actually exposure at this juncture was amazing.
Yeah.
So we had a chance possibly to get, signed, but I was discovered working at some very prestigious establishments without a permit, and they gave me a period of time in which I could remain, and then I had to go home.
You couldn't get a permit at that point?
I had, what's the technical term? PO'd them?
Yeah.
Because I didn't ask for a permit before,
Oh, so this is assuming that they get a piece of every earnings on that. Is that?
I don't know. I don't know how it works. I would assume you have to prove that you're doing something which is vital.
Right.
Which really I couldn't prove that. I mean, I was just a lucky American in a great place at the right time. So,
Man.
But I did hear and get to experience live some amazing people, without a doubt, who still inspire me to this day. So
talk about that. I know you saw guys like Clapton, Beck, and Peter Green playing in small little clubs. Tell me about those experiences.
So I'll start with Beck, just because I remember that this was the Jeff Beck group with Rod Stewart.
Oh, right. The real soulful bluesy Jeff Beck.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, and that band was incredible. Anyway, those first two records were amazing. And I know it's hard to believe now, but this is when Rod Stewart was shy. He actually turned his back.
Wow.
Like he was, I can't say that he was nervous. I don't know that for sure, but he appeared to be very shy. He sort of huddled back near the amplifiers.
Interesting.
He became more outward as the set went on. And Jeff Beck was unbelievable. I mean, everything had to be all the way up. It was a Marshall, and the hum from the Marshall was louder than some people I had seen before. It was serious.
Was he playing a Telly or the Black Les Paul?
But I'm remembering, I could be misremembering this. I'm remembering a Les Paul, but I can't swear what color it was. I do remember this for sure, though. There was a guy in the crowd who was heckling him. Yeah, heckling Jeff Beck. Can you believe it? No,
I can't. I mean, I can because people are just stupid sometimes, but
well, I think that, there's probably alcohol involved, but the guy was saying, I can't do a good accent here, so I won't really try, but he was saying, who do you think you are, bloody Buddy Guy? Because Jeff Beck was playing some Buddy Guy-isms, albeit a little heavier in tone, but they were, those really quick, almost sleight of hand Buddy Guy licks. He was doing some of those, and man, why not? I mean, heck, steal from the best.
Absolutely.
And so, but there was something about being nettled like that prodded Jeff Beck into even more greatness. Wow. He looked like he was not happy about it, and he played unbelievably great right afterward. It was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
You're going to do that? Well, here it is. I'm throwing it down. So it was unbelievable.
That's incredible.
I didn't see them that often, but that night stuck with me. I saw Eric Clapton in Cream.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah, which was,
that's when he was that's my favorite Eric Clapton.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
The combination of deep soul, incredible phrasing, beautiful note choices, vibrato to die for, and that power. That tone, just literally phenomenal. And, that definitely made its mark. But the person I probably saw the most was Peter Green.
That's interesting. Hold on one second. Question. Yeah. Was Clapton playing his SG or his 335? What was he playing, if you remember?
I know for a little bit something happened to the SG and he played a Strat that had a rosewood board. I don't know what happened to the SG, and it was when the SG was painted.
Yeah.
But I think there was another time before that. And I can't swear that it was the SG. I think it might have been a Les Paul. Yeah, I'm not remembering that clearly. You know, I was young and I was doing things.
And there may be some alcohol involved as well. Who knows?
Well, there were other things. But yeah, it was definitely Marshall's though. And it looked like everything was dimed. I mean, just every knob was dimed.
Just one more question about that. You know, Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce.
Oh my God.
Those guys are just top of the, well, I mean, that must have been pretty cool to see those guys in action just as well.
It was unbelievable. And they were both at the peak, you know, of their considerable powers. The other thing I remember is that the bass and the drums, particularly the bass, was so loud that my pant leg was shaking as if there was wind blowing through it. But it was the bass. It was incredible.
That's wild.
It was wild. And yes, it was incredibly inspiring. I mean, to see three people basically at the peak of their ability and sharing it with each other and with, you know, a group of music aficionados or just music fans, very inspiring and remains inspiring. And also because the rhythm section had different influences. So they brought that to bear, and I think it inspired, and I hope this isn't too presumptuous, because Eric Clapton is Eric Clapton after all, but it felt like it pushed Eric Clapton, you know, because their influences were different. You know, I mean, of course they could lay back, but they took things, even things that could have been, you know, familiar, they pushed them somehow. There was velocity always on whatever they were, you know, addressing, and pretty amazing.
That's great, amazing. Man.
Yeah, amazing to see, and amazing to see how he responded to it. So,
Peter Green, I'm sorry I cut you off there before to ask you a question about Clapton.
Yeah. This was after he had left John Mayall. I didn't get to see him in John Mayall. And it was in the very early stages of Fleetwood Mac. So initially it was a quartet with Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Jeremy Spencer, and Peter Green. And later they added Danny Kirwan. I also saw them with that.
That's crazy that you actually got to saw those lineups, man.
And the thing is, like, they would have, I mean, even though he was definitely the leader, Peter Green was it seemed very gracious with the stage. I mean, Jeremy Spencer would play a number of songs, you know, a lot of Elmore, and really well. And Peter Green would sit back there and play rhythm for Jeremy Spencer. And at a certain point, I'm assuming they worked it out, but I don't know if they worked it out really, but Jeremy Spencer would leave. I don't know why he didn't stay and play piano or play rhythm guitar, but he didn't. He would just go off stage, and then it would be a trio.
That's weird.
And that was just hard for me to even put into words how great that was. Because Peter Green was developing, he was evolving, and I think he's brilliant, is brilliant. But he was evolving from what he had played like with John Mayall to what he became, which was something different than that. It was more sparse, even more incisive. I mean, I loved what he did with John Mayall, and that was brilliant too, but this was different, and he was writing and singing. So it was the complete artistic presentation. And when it was the trio, one of the great lessons was he didn't try to fill every space. He actually let the space be like another member of the band. And he had beautiful tone. He had beautiful touch on the guitar and tremendous vibrato. And you could hear the influences, yes, but you also knew that it was Peter Green. If you heard like 3 notes, you know it was Peter Green. And I actually am a huge fan of his singing and songwriting as well. And so, yeah, I feel incredibly lucky to have seen that. And Danny Kerwin was tremendous as well. You know, I saw him, I think the first time I saw him, they might have brought him up or he might have opened. And then later, of course, he joined. But I think he had a band called Boiler House, I think was the name of it. And but he definitely had a thing. He had almost a Lowell Fulson thing in the beginning. And then later he developed this amazing vibrato. His vibrato was incredible. And so, yeah, I feel really lucky to have been there and to have experienced this. And I know it sounds weird, but it sort of pointed me back to my own American roots. Like, these guys were very serious students of American blues guitar. I mean,
right.
Like, they venerated the art form. And it made me realize, okay, I'm a guitar owner right now. I need to either sell the thing I have or become a guitar player, you know, because right now I'm just an owner. And so once I got home, I have devoted myself ever since to trying to be a player rather than just an owner of an instrument. So
that's a great story, man. Thank you. Was Peter playing his Les Paul?
He was, and there were also times where he played a Sunburst Stratocaster. I think it was a 50s Stratocaster. But most of the time I saw him, it was with that classic kind of iced tea colored or lemon burst, whatever they call it, Les Paul. But there were moments where he was using a Strat, and I believe it was a 50s Strat. And initially it was Marshall's. Somewhere along the way it became Orange. I think the Orange, I think the Orange company, they had some agreement, and the band, I think the band as a whole switched to Orange.
That's interesting. So Cream or Clapton and Jeff Beck were playing Marshalls
for sure.
And then Peter Green started with Marshalls and switched over to Orange. That's really interesting.
There might have been a Fender in there, you know, at certain times, but I remember mostly the Marshall to Orange transition. Both great, just a little different.
Yeah, totally.
And there was, I think on the Orange amps, there was reverb, and he really knew how to work the reverb. And the other thing that, I mean, I know people talk about it, but his dynamics were incredible. I mean, even in the space of one solo, you know, he could go from a whisper to this power, but I know this sounds strange, but he didn't really ever overstep with that power. It's like he knew that he had it. It's like when somebody's really strong, they don't necessarily have to use that all the time.
Yeah.
Because they know they've got it. And that's kind of how it was. Like he didn't just, you know, play flat out like on 9.9 all the time. You know, he would back it off and he would play slowly and meditatively, you know, a fair amount of the time. And then to make a point or to make a statement, then he would, you know, unleash it, so to speak. And that was a big difference between him and some of the other folks I saw. Just how attuned he was to dynamics.
I wonder, just talking out loud, if some of that if because of his mental illness, if he was able to dig into places and relate to things that somebody who didn't have mental illness couldn't do, or didn't, if that contributed to his talent with that.
It may well have. I don't know. At the point at which I saw him, he seemed to be at the absolute peak of his ability. And if there were issues, they were not evident to the audience. That was later. That was, I don't know if it was a manifestation of something that had been there, or if it was exacerbated by drugs, particularly acid. But this would have been, I think, in advance of that.
Okay. Yeah, you don't know what. Yeah, right.
But I think your point is very well taken. That my guess is he had an incredible sensitivity, artistically and personally, and yeah, it might have allowed him to dig even deeper into certain areas. It also might have made him more susceptible to other things, or to other forces, shall we say.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, because it begs the question then, is mental illness inside of somebody? And, I've talked to a lot of guys who've gotten sober over the years, and gals. And one of my buddies said something. He said, genetics, let me see. I think he said genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. So is that the same with mental illness, which I guess addiction is a form of mental illness? Is it there in you? And like in Peter's case, did the drugs cause it, or did they just bring it out? And you're never going to know the answer to that. But
well, one thing I know for sure is I've lost a bunch of friends to drug use. And during the height of the acid time, I had a friend that jumped from a window.
Holy crap.
Right. So
that's heavy, man.
So was there,
Oof.
The drug clearly plays a part in making you think maybe that you're immortal, or that you can do something that logic would tell you oughtn't to do. Was there some other factor inside that might have been triggered by the drug? I don't know. I'm not really qualified to say, but I do know that that's a powerful drug, and there are probably some really great things about it. But not everyone can handle it.
Yeah.
And not everyone should venture there, and it's always good to have good surroundings and help when you do venture there. So
yeah,
I don't know what his situation was like when he was doing it. So.
Wow. Sorry about that. It's heavy, man.
Yeah.
I took acid one time only. It was a great experience. We went to a Grateful Dead concert. So
perfect.
If you're going to take acid, that's
perfect.
It was like really wild. And I had a good experience. In fact, I thought at the end, I said, man, you know what? Everybody should do this because it really fucks with your mind.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
You start seeing shit, and it's like, it just as like a test. But I never did it again. It was a one-time only thing.
You were smart. I did it a few more times than I should have. But I do have a story for you about that, and about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, good timing.
I was lucky to know somebody on a social committee at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. And they brought in some great bands. They brought in NRBQ, and they brought in the Dead with the New Riders of Purple Sage. And yeah, phenomenal. And
great bill.
Great bill. And my friend was incredibly kind and generous and got me to open for this. So
wow. So you're opening for the New Riders of the Purple Sage and the Grateful Dead. Right. Holy crap.
Again,
awesome.
had no business being there. truly. I mean, artistically, no business at all. But I was there. So much to my surprise, we played okay. I mean, I was pretty nervous, but we played okay. I'm sure the rhythm section played great. Came off stage and this guy approached me. And he knew the references. He knew like the Freddie King and the Magic Sam, and he knew all of it. And that was Jerry Garcia.
Wow.
He knew all of it, man. He clearly had studied and listened and really appreciated it. And he was incredibly cool, very funny, very bright. He was also compassionate because he said, I hope you're going to stay, to hear us play. And absolutely. Are you kidding? I mean, I'm just lucky to be here opening, and I'm definitely staying. He's like, the one thing, I wouldn't drink anything backstage.
Oh man, that's a good heads up. If anybody knows, it's going to be that dude.
It was
holy crap.
Good heads up, and they were incredible. So the new writers came out, and I think Jerry and Bob Weir played with them in their set, and then the Dead came out, and I mean, it felt like they played for 4 hours. It might have been 2.5 or 3.
No, they probably did.
It might have been, yeah. And they were incredible. It was right in that period between Working Man's Dead and American Beauty.
Okay. Yeah.
So there was a country thing. He was playing steel. Man, he got great on steel really fast. That's not an easy instrument.
No.
And he really made an artistic statement on it. So yeah, my respect for him.
How cool is that though? Don't drink anything, but that is very compassionate.
Exactly.
That is really cool. I mean, just to even think of that.
And not everybody would do that.
Even if they thought of it. Yeah.
That's right.
That was really a cool thing.
Totally cool. And really, clearly very smart. I mean, like sharp, as they say, as a tack. Like he was on it.
Yeah.
Like he knew. Yeah, when you played that third song, I heard that Freddie King stuff. And then later I heard that you did some Otis Rush vibrato, heard some Magic Sam. Like he knew all of it, man. Like you can't know that unless you've really paid attention, unless you've played that yourself.
Yeah.
People don't think of him as a blues guy, but that he clearly knew. He clearly knew, man. And
dude, what a good experience. Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Well, he was a sweetheart. Total sweetheart, man.
So how long did you wind up staying in England for?
I stayed for just about a year. Just about a year before I got bounced. And that was a really great time to be there.
Yeah, clearly. So you come back to Connecticut and you start playing your guitar. What do you do for work, or like what's going on?
Well, I was really disconcerted when I came back. America looks very different when you haven't been in it for a while. And
oh, that's interesting.
And like there are today, there were factions. Pretty profound disagreements. So I did little odd jobs, but basically I stayed in my room and practiced guitar to the point where my mom got worried about me. Like, are you ever going to leave the room and maybe go on a date? Maybe go to the movies? Like,
what was your Marine dad thinking during all this stuff? He must have.
Well, yeah, they had split up.
Oh, okay.
So he wasn't there, but yeah, he was not happy with me at all.
Yeah.
He thought I was full of it, Later he came around and reflected more, and he wasn't so sure about that particular war by the end of it either. So
so you were able to work things out at some point?
Yeah, we did. We did
that's
work,
great.
But it was, it was painful before we worked it out.
Oh, I'm sure. But it sounds like he, I think with parents, as a parent, I don't know if you have kids.
No, I have a cat.
I have that too, but they're a lot easier than kids.
Yeah, that's what people tell me.
So much, even if you have like 5, it's easier than like half of one kid. But my thoughts are, when you're the parent, man, the burden is on you to fix shit.
Right.
You brought this person into the world. He or she did not ask to be there. That's your responsibility. That's how I've always, you know, so I've never had a problem apologizing to, because it's not their job to come. They're kids. They don't have the maturity in the world. So it sounds like Dad did the same thing, which was really cool.
It was.
Or he got there eventually.
I'm glad that we got there before he left.
Yeah, man. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So you're sitting in your room playing guitar 8 to 10 hours a day. What happens? When do you suddenly like start playing music? And how did that?
So one thing it's important to remember is that some of the greats in the music were still alive and they were still coming around.
Oh, okay.
So there's a place in Willimantic, Connecticut, up in the direction of the University of Connecticut, called Shabu Inn. And they would bring Albert Collins, Freddie King, Buddy Guy and Junior Wells, Roy Buchanan, you name it, they would bring them. So it became a mission for me to try to see as many people as I could, because previously I hadn't actually gone and seen them or met them. So the great thing about Shabu is you could sit literally almost as close as we are to these screens, and you could watch where people put their hands, how they created vibrato, how they pitch bent, little glisses, little trills. Because I'm self-taught, so I didn't have any, and this is before there were videos.
Of course, yeah. You can hop on YouTube and watch someone
really
play the stumble.
Now.
Yeah.
We're really lucky now. But then it was, and I thought about moving, I thought about, well, maybe I should move to Chicago or Texas or something, where I can actually just be in the environment. I didn't do that, but what I did was I went out every possible chance I could to see people and where possible to meet them, and so this was still Connecticut, and I started to get a little better as I put in the time and as I watched people play. And then once I moved to Massachusetts, I had a regular job, but I was torn between the regular job and the practicing.
What made you move to Massachusetts? Was your mom moved there?
No, it was a woman who's long gone.
Oh, okay.
But for the better.
Yeah.
I'm married now, and infinitely better than where I had been previously. But when I moved to Mass, I was lucky to meet some people who were partners in a recording studio.
Okay.
And it was a studio that the Cars owned on Newbury Street. Wow. And these two guys were just starting to try to produce blues records. And they did a couple of them. And in the course of doing that, they happened onto a situation where Pinetop Perkins was going to come through and make a record with them, with a bunch of amazing local musicians. So one thing led to another, and they asked me if I would overdub some guitar on that, and that record came out. And then, once that happened, then the person who ran the record company also was a booking agent. And so he asked if I would be interested in putting together a band to back Pine up, when he came through. And of course it was like, yeah, that's kind of the honor of a lifetime. So yes, sign me up for that, you know. And I heard all kinds of stuff before we played together, and you know, he was incredibly kind and supportive and sweet to me and to the band. I mean, to the point of like sticking up for me in situations. Because, you know, we were young. We weren't a traditional rhythm, you know, we weren't a traditional blues band. We were, although we loved the traditional music, we, you know, we had heard Cream, we had heard Jimi Hendrix, we had heard other things. And those things had, you know, had filtered in to who we are and who we were. And so we brought some of that with us. And, you know, I'm not saying that was always the right thing, but I mean, he was incredible. The first gig we played together, I tried to lay as far back as I possibly could, out of respect, out of regard, because the place we played was packed. It was just unbelievably packed. And I knew they weren't there for me. They were there for him. So after the first set,
that's a pretty mature, you know, sense of understanding the dynamics of how that works at a young age.
Well, I got put in a situation where they made me, quote unquote, the musical director.
Right.
Which was, I mean, I wasn't the musical director. Pinetop was the musical director. I knew it, and we all knew it. What it meant is that they paid me, and then I had to pay everyone.
Okay.
It created this really interesting dynamic, which I can tell you about later. But bottom line is, I knew that this was an honor and a privilege and probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So we came off after the first set, and he was very nice. He came up to me. He was like, I know you can play. You know, I heard you play on that record. You know the piano riffs I'm playing. He said, why aren't you playing? I said, because it's out of respect for you. You're a legend. I mean, you're, my God, you're Pinetop Perkins.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? You play with Muddy Waters. You played with all the greats. It's like, I don't want to get in the way. And I know myself, I'm capable of getting in the way. You know what I mean? And
every guitar player is.
Right. He's like, no. He said, I like it when the guitar player gets up my ass. That was a direct quote. He said, when I look at you, I want you to play. And he was serious about it, man. It was like, he wasn't afraid of anything that I could tell. And by the end of it, he was out dancing on the dance floor. He had a different suit every night, by the way, and a different woman every night, from what I could tell.
Good for him.
Every night.
Question for you. How did you get to the point, last time you were around guitars, England, you're like, man, I'm not much of a guitar player. I can play harp and I'll get by. How did you get to the point, because you're practicing in your bedroom, right, 8 to 10 hours a day. You're not like, well, I went out to Sam Ash open mic night one night, and
right,
and all of a sudden you're like playing with Pinetop Perkins. How did you, and maybe you just faked it in the beginning, but how did you sort of reconcile or adjust the fears you had about yourself playing to overcome that?
I think we all have those fears, or at least a lot of the guitar players I meet have those fears. I think at a certain point, if you're desiring to express, or something is coming through you that wants to be expressed, you have to honor that. I'm not saying it's a channeling, but it might be something like that. And it isn't, of course, entirely selfless. We all have, you know, whatever we need that's going to propel us to get on a stage.
Yeah, yeah.
But what I tried to do, and what I'm still trying to do, is the music's there. It's first. You know what I mean? And all of the rest of it is afterward. And so I hope this doesn't sound ridiculous, but I had a gauge of what greatness was. Not saying I got there, but I had a gauge of it because I had experienced it. You know, I'd been lucky to be in a room where greatness actually existed. And both in London and in the States, I'd experienced it.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, some of that you can experience just on record, but I'd actually been in a room where somebody did something, and if you were at all attuned, you knew that this was something well worth paying attention to, and as they say, very serious shit. So, I mean, I remember being at Shabu and Buddy Guy starting out a set, playing little bits of tunes by artists who influenced him.
Yeah, he's done that. I've seen him 5 times. I've seen him do that at least once or twice. Yeah.
But this was like Jimmy Reed, T-Bone Walker, Lightning Hopkins, B.B. King. And he would do all of them and they would be spot on. I mean, this wasn't like some hacker's idea of this. It was like brilliant. Yeah. It was sort of, this is where I come from, and now this is where I'm going. And at some point in that night, there was a weird thing with the ceiling at Shabu. I don't know what it was, like the tiles were messed up. He had a Guild Starfire. He put it on these pipes up above his head, and he played it like that. And somebody in the audience heckled him, "Oh, you're just doing Hendrix." Oh, God. And he's like, "I was doing this before Hendrix. I like Hendrix, but I was doing this before Hendrix." Like, you have to know the lineage. Before you shout that out, you've got to know. I mean, that show thing goes way back. I don't claim to know all of the history of it, but it goes really, really far back, probably beyond Charlie Patton. You know, it goes way back. People flipping the guitar, playing it with their feet, knocking it with their hands. And it's just a way to get people's attention. You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes you've got to, you know, there's a lot of great players. And so Buddy would do this thing where he had a chord and he would go into the ladies' bathroom.
Yeah, I've seen him do stuff like that.
Now, the problem is, you can't imitate everything that your idols do. Because I did a couple of these things that I saw Buddy do, and I almost got my handed to me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because he used to do this thing where he'd pick the prettiest girl and he'd sit at the table with her, whether she had a guy with her or not. Now, he's Buddy Guy. He can get away with that. I tried that. I almost got cold cocked.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got to be careful. You can adore your idols, but you can't always go everywhere that they go. Or if you do, you got to be prepared that the reception might not be the same for you as it was for him.
Well, I think everybody has their own strengths, and you can't presume that someone else's strengths are your strengths, or that you could execute it. You know, you got to either test it and figure it out, or just, you know, gauge it and give it a thought first. Does this feel right? Can I get away with this kind of thing? Yeah.
But to answer your question more bluntly, I feel like the music impelled me. I knew I wasn't there technically. I still feel like technically it's an infinite search.
Yeah, I think every musician.
Guitar is an infinite, music is an infinite search. Yeah. But the music impels you forward. Like, if you wait till you're ready, you may be waiting an awfully long time. Sometimes you've just gotta go make music.
Yeah.
And trust that it's going to come through you, and keep working. Just keep working every day. And that's what I do. I still do it every day. You have to. Because once you start laying off and thinking you're the shit, you know, come on. It's the music that's the shit. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Not you yourself, it's the music. So you honor that, and hopefully the music, keeps coming through you, keeps wanting to inhabit you, which is really what it is. It can always find somebody better. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, but that's not. But that's not why people go to concerts.
No, I know.
The people don't go to. I mean, maybe that's why people go to a Steve Morse concert.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah,
pretty damn good.
But I mean, most people just want to hear the vibe.
Yeah, right.
Thanks. I appreciate your answering that. It was interesting. You've pretty much always been a solo artist. What are the biggest challenges of that over being a sideman? And had you ever throughout your career considered pursuing sideman gigs?
Yeah, I remember we talked about this.
Yeah.
I actually got to be quote unquote a solo artist by doing a ton of sideman gigs. Okay. I was a sideman for years. I played in, not saying I was all that great at it, but I played in a bunch of what used to be called soul bands. And, a lot of areas have these circuits.
Sure.
Some places they call it the Chitlin circuit. Some places they call it something else. Sometimes they call it the bucket of blood clubs. So I played in a bunch of soul bands, which was incredible for my right hand. It helped my right hand tremendously. Yeah. And the guys I played with, some of them were really good. And like they would play you, we'd go out to a car and they would say, next set, here's what we're going to do. And they would put on a James Brown record. Now that's some serious music. Oh,
and that's excruciating on your right hand, man. That's right. The same thing.
So
for
you
6
understand.
Minutes.
So you understand.
And
if you could do it, and if you could do it, they'd nod their head. If you couldn't do it, they'd be like, later for you.
Yeah.
Basically. So that did wonders for my right hand. It also taught me the incredible value and importance of rhythm guitar, which is really, in a lot of ways, the backbone of bands like that. The drum.
Well, how often are you playing lead? Unless you're like Satriani or Vi. I mean, you're not, most of the time, even if you're a solo artist, you're not playing lead.
Right. So I played in bands like that. I played in a country band for a while.
Wow.
I love Telecaster. I particularly love, Roy Nichols and all that kind of, I guess you would call it the golden era.
Yeah.
I love that kind of guitar playing. I haven't really kept up with it, but it's brilliant. And there's, modern people who've taken it to stratospheric heights. I realized I needed to, hone in on something if I was ever going to be, quote unquote, good enough to present it. But I mean, obviously Danny Gatton, Roy Buchanan, those guys.
You saw Roy, you said, right?
I opened for Roy.
Holy shit. So tell me about him.
At Shabu Inn.
He's one of my favorite. I mean,
me too.
Just a genius.
I agree. And I think one of the reasons why is that he was able to he took blues guitar and he took country guitar, and he somehow was able to meld them. He took aspects of each and he melded them into one of the most soulful and signature voices in modern guitar.
And his harmonic master.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I've never heard anyone.
Right.
He's one of those guys that you never hear somebody and say, oh, that guy's like Roy Buchanan, because nobody could do that. I mean, you'll hear people like, oh, he's like Stevie Ray Vaughan, he's Buddy Guy, whatever. You don't hear that with Roy Buchanan and also Mike Bloomfield. Those two guys.
Yeah, I love Bloomers too. Um, I got to see him with Paul Butterfield Blues Band, which was
Holy
incredible.
smokes, dude! You've seen some shows, haven't you?
But Roy was, he was like an uncle at the beginning of the night. Sat at the bar, couldn't have been nicer. Like, talked guitar, was very gentle, very artistic in the way that he saw things. It wasn't a lesson per se, but it was, And then something happened. I can only presume that someone gave him something or he took something, became a little different.
You mean this is on the same night?
Yeah. Became more ferocious, I guess is the best way to put it. And then
he was just drinking.
Well, I don't know if he was just drinking, but he was drinking. But when he went up to play, he put on a clinic. I mean, he started with the tune After Hours. He had a Vibrolux, I think. He turned it so the speakers were facing the audience. The back of the amp was facing the audience. And it had to be dimed. I mean, everything had to have been dimed. Maybe the reverb wasn't dimed. Way up. And it felt like he played that song for 10 minutes. It probably was 4.
Right.
And he played everything in it. Everything that you'd want to be able to play. He played octaves. He played a chord solo. He played sixths. He played, thirds. He played country bends. He played crying, just, single note bends. He played incredible cascades. He played chromatic, that chromatic thing he does where he goes from one end of the guitar all the way off the fretboard. He did everything. Like, there was nothing else to do. And that was the first song. And somehow he played a whole set, And it was definitely telly. I didn't see any pedals. I just saw telly and the amp all the way up.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, it's limited what's out there, but he don't usually play with pedals.
I think he might have played with a delay pedal later, when he wasn't traveling with his own amp. I think he might have, but not on this night. It was just reverb from the amp. One of the greats, one of the greatest who ever lived.
Yeah, man.
Essentially.
Low points. What were some of the low points or dark periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Been a bunch of them. I've quit the guitar hundreds of times. It's such a difficult instrument, and I'm self-taught, so you run up against the limits of your knowledge, and you feel like you're pushing a rock metaphorically up a mountain. And sometimes it feels like you're never going to get, not just there, but you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I've quit a whole bunch of times, which isn't, a great feeling, and it slows down your progress. But ultimately, I realized that quitting was not for me, if that makes any sense.
It does.
I realized that if I really did want to be a guitar player, not an owner, I was going to have to face my own limitations and try to just be a better player. And the other serious low point is when I hurt my wrist about a year ago. And I had a fall. And, it was really because of stubbornness. It was a day where we were supposed to put out the recycling and the trash. And it was February, so it was icy.
Cold, yeah.
And my wife said, "You don't need to do that. Just let it be." And I said, "I'm a cat. I'll land." And I landed.
Oh, man.
On my you-know-what. Threw out my arm to brace my fall, and I got hurt. And so that would have been enough, except then it was misdiagnosed. You have to always, whoever you are, if you are a musician, you have to always go to someone who is a specialist, who understands what we are asking our systems to do.
Yeah.
Don't go to someone who only knows sports, which is great.
Right.
But they're asking their hands and their arms and so forth to do different motions. So I went to somebody who took an x-ray, and the thing I have will not show up on an x-ray.
Oh, man.
So he gave me a little brace, and he said in 2 to 3 months, never know what happened. In 3 months, I was in more pain than I was in when I went to see him. And I had gigs. I had a bunch of gigs, and I was playing in pain every day.
God, that's horrible.
So finally I had to get over my pride and go see a specialist who my wife liked, had a kind of a crush on. That was hard for me because he was brilliant. He is brilliant. And, but he knew what I had. He had actually created a specific brace to deal with the thing that I had.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, I went to the right guy. And the down part of this is that a lot of people who get it have to have surgery. And I wasn't sure I wanted to have surgery because I've known too many guitar players specifically who haven't come back and been the same after surgery. Sure. So I asked him if there was another option, and he said, yeah, you can wear this brace for a month or longer, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it takes. You cannot touch the guitar during that time. You cannot turn a doorknob in that time. You can't do all the things that you do that you don't think about aggravate what I had done to my wrist. It's a tear. And so it's like a shock absorber in your wrist. You can tear it through trauma or just through age. And this guy rubbed it into me. He said, you screwed twice. I said, what do you mean I screwed twice? Yeah, nice, right. It's like, well, he said, you had trauma, you fell, and you're older. So you screwed twice. Your chances of actually healing are really minuscule. And I think that's why I healed.
Oh, you got
just out of stubbornness.
Yes, righteous indignation. Yeah.
By the way, is that a PV Delta Blues in back?
It is. It is.
I love those amps.
Yeah, they're just, best tremolo, best reverb. They're really good amps.
Great amplifier. Yeah, I used one in Germany. Went over there a bunch of times to play. Again, as a sideman.
That's but this is the one I wind up using. The JCM 800.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to, as great as that amp is, man. It's hard.
Hard to beat the JCM 800. Come on,
it's hard to not turn that on. Even though it's more firepower than any, but it's even low.
It's okay.
So great,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, you asked me about sideman things. So I played literally probably thousands of gigs
as a sideman.
Most of them weren't with anybody you would ever know. But they were all excellent training.
Yeah.
And
go back to your arm. How long did that take to heal?
It took months to heal, because then after it looked like it was healing, I had to learn how to play again. And you take for granted how much strength is involved in bending a note up to pitch and then vibrating it. That takes a lot more force than I ever realized.
Interesting.
So I was forbidden for doing that. My doctor forbid me to do that. And I was like, well, that's what I do. He's like, not till we know for sure, unless you want to go into the hospital and have surgery, take it slow, play some chords, just like take it slow. So it took me it took me a while. Feels like a miracle now.
That's good.
Actually, feels like a miracle. So
I'm glad it all worked.
I guess music wants me to keep doing whatever it is. So
let's talk gear for a few minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now, and what other two guitars would round out your top three?
Oh yeah, I know you asked this question. I'm a Fender guy, Fender it might not always say Fender on the headstock, but Strats and Tellys and Strats, they're my favorite. Push comes to shove, I guess it would be a Stratocaster, and I have, my wife would say, too many of them. I don't have anything incredibly vintage in the Strat or Telly realm. I wish I did, but I did once, but foolishly sold. And then I do have an old Harmony Stratotone.
I'm looking to buy one of them. They're so
phenomenal.
I know.
Phenomenal.
They're wonderful. They're wonderful.
Yeah, I have a good story about this. I was playing in New Hampshire at a bar, and this is the one that's, neck through body.
Mm-hmm.
Single
pickup. It's not the bolt-on. Okay.
Not the bolt-on, no. Those are cool too. But I was playing a gig, and this bass player I knew came into the gig, and he said, I have something out in my truck I think you're going to want. And, New Hampshire's got a drug problem. So I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? What are you talking about? At least this particular town in New Hampshire does. It's tragic. Actually, no.
It's like meth up there, isn't it?
There's all kinds of all kinds of stuff. It's not good. So I said, no, what are you talking about? He's like, no. It's like, I've got a guitar I think you're going to want to see. So I go out in the break. He opens the truck and presents with quite a bit of fanfare this guitar, which is literally in pieces. Like the pickguard is like off. There's no functioning bridge. There's no functioning tailpiece. And he wants, for the time, a fair amount of money for it. It wasn't working at all. It did have a chipboard case, which I think was original.
Yeah, they are chipboard. Was it did DeArmond's? Was it DeArmond pickup?
It's that one. I guess it's I haven't studied the make of the pickup. I don't know if it's a DeArmond or a gold foil, what it is exactly, but it's one of the most unbelievable sounding pickups I've ever heard.
They sound great, man.
So, and it's got a neck on it like that. I mean, a baseball bat doesn't do it justice. It's basically like an ironing board married to a baseball bat that somebody decided to put a pickup on. So I bought it, right? Even though he wanted too much money. He's like, well, I can sell it tomorrow to so-and-so. I was like, yeah, you probably can. So I bought it. I brought it home. All proud, like any guitar player.
Right.
Bring it home. My wife would stay up, to make sure I made it home from the gigs. Because there are treacherous spots on the roads, with ice and so forth. So I come in the door with this thing. She says, what's that? I show it to her. She says, what are you going to do with that piece of shit? Because that's what it looked like. That's exactly what it looked like, man.
Nice.
So I said, you wait. After I give it to Steve Morrill or Wolf Janandis, it's going to be a gem. And it is a gem. We had to obviously find or replace parts on it, but nothing I have sounds like that.
Yeah, those pickups.
And it probably needs a refret. I mean, right now I've got it set up to play slide on because,
okay,
it's hard to play it any other way right now. The frets are just so done, but incredible. So that's pretty much irreplaceable.
Yeah, those gold foils are.
And then I love Tweed style amps.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got one here. I've got a Tweed Princeton that I borrowed. And my friend has not asked me to send it back. And it's just, I love pretty much anything Tweed, but this is a Tweed Princeton. It's just got a thing.
Man, that's how I feel about those Delta Blues amps.
Yeah, they've got it, man. No, they've got a thing.
Yeah, because I was listening. I was with a guy in Nashville in his studio, and he had a bunch of amps, and he's let me play through this little old Fender Blackface. I said, man, do you have anything like that you could sell me that's not this expensive? He goes, that thing is just as good as any vintage Fender.
Right.
It's proven true. I love it.
Oh, they're great. They're great. Yeah. Yeah, we went to I went to Germany about, I don't know, maybe 7 times. And at first they would give me Marshalls and stuff. And I love Marshalls, but they were almost too much for the venues we were playing, too loud.
Yeah.
Once they gave me that, I was all set because you can get a great tone, but you can dial it back.
Absolutely. And again, that tremolo and reverb.
Oh man, I know. Yeah.
You're not going to find a pedal that sounds as good as that tremolo.
No,
I haven't seen one anyway.
No, that's a great amplifier. In fact,
and
I sold light. Mine. Now you're making me want one again.
It's light, only 30 pounds. Or I mean, it's 30 watts and it's probably 20 pounds, 25 pounds most. Yeah, it's a great amp. Let's talk about your new record, Mississippi Suitcase. I wanted to ask you a question about a couple of the, and you might have answered this one. The World is Upside Down. Is that a resonator you're using for a slide? Or is that, now that I know, is that Stratotone?
It's the Stratotone.
How did you get the distortion on that? That sounded freaking great.
Well, this is a thing I found out when I have a friend named David Herwalt, used to do a blues show in Cambridge, Mass. And that was how I met Hubert Sumlin. And through the grace of the gods and goddesses, got to play with Hubert. But David would bring in musicians to appear on air. And one day he brought in Rick Holmstrom.
I had Rick on. He's a great player. Telly.
Phenomenal. And so he had a guitar. He had a harmony. I think he might have, I can't remember, it was 1 or 2 harmonies. But one of them was definitely a Stratotone. And he just plugged straight into an amp. And it just sounded like, basically the face of God.
Yeah.
Or at least one of the faces of God. So that guitar just plugged in and turned up makes this roar that's hard to approximate with anything else. I'm not sure when we did that, which of my genius engineer producer, Ducky Carlisle, his studio has vintage Marshalls, vintage Fenders, and a Peter Cage, which is also a really cool amp.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
It might have been a combination. It might have been like a Tweed twin, one of those, high-powered Tweed twins, and maybe a Marshall.
Okay.
It might have been just that, like plugged into, the Stratotone plugged into those. And when we wanted to goose things a little bit, he has an incredible, I know people say these are incredible. This is like that, just like that little bit more incredible Klon Centaur. I don't know why, but this particular one, it's just, I could play through that thing all day long. Yeah. And I don't own one, and I feel really terrible about it. And the guy who makes them is brilliant. Bill, thank you for the Klon Centaur. You're amazing.
You got a lyric in there. Is this the second coming or just some kind of sign? I was curious what was going through your mind when you wrote that.
So it's funny because what I was thinking of is, I know this is going to sound like I'm still doing psychedelics, but I'm not.
Doesn't make you a bad person if you are.
If you combined Jimi Hendrix, Howlin' Wolf, and William Butler Yeats, what would you have? So that verse pretty much comes right from William Butler Yeats. There is a poem of his called The Second Coming. And that's what was going through my mind was, I know people say this, I don't know for sure that we are, but it feels like we are. We're at a critical juncture. We're at what they call an inflection point in the world and in our society. And so I don't know what it is precisely, but you feel the import of it.
Yeah.
You can feel it. mean, COVID is certainly part of it, but there are other factors.
Yeah, man. It's environment, it's politics, it's a
Right.
lot of shit. Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing that was in my mind, is that we really need to take care of the world that we've been gifted to live in.
Yeah, man.
Respect it, honor it.
Not even for us, but like, I worry about my kids and their kids, my granddaughter,
Right.
my sons.
What is it going
daughter.
to be? Right.
Yeah, man. That's what concerns me.
So that's a lot of what that song is about.
Yeah.
You know, but what I tried to do, I'm not saying I was successful, but what I tried to do was take Rollin' and Tumblin' by Hambo and Willie Newburn, which is the basis musically of that track, and marry it, so to speak, with those influences that I named. And initially it was going to all be a slide tune, but the more I got into it, then I tried adding a guitar with a tone bender on, which is in there. It's like that really heavy rhythm. And then I tried some solos on a Telecaster. And, you know, by the end of it, you know, we felt like we had something.
It's a great track. It gives
hopefully something good, you know.
Great groove on that track all the way through.
Oh my God, the guy that plays drums on most of the record and the bass player, they're just ridiculous. Jim Carmen is his name, and he plays in a band up here called GA20, rather great traditional blues band. He's a great young drummer, and Mark Hickox played bass, and Tom West played keyboard. All of those guys are amazing. On a couple of the tracks, Marco Givino, who's a genius, played drums and produced those tracks with some all-star, you know, guys. I'll name if you want me to, but
whatever you want, man. Your call.
I don't like kind of riding on them, but Luther Dickinson's on there on one of those tracks.
Cool.
Spooner Oldham's on another track. So
I mean, you got some big names.
Yeah, those are because of Marco. Marco knows those guys. He's friends with them, you know. And he's that level, you know. He's an amazing, amazing musician. So I was lucky to have played with him for a bit. That's all.
It's a great record, and I love that particular
Thank you,
track.
brother. Yeah, it's funny you say that because, you know, you're revered elsewhere usually as an artist. Like, I'm getting all kinds of great responses in UK and Holland and Australia, but the reviewer in Boston said, "I've heard it all before." That track. I've heard it all before. I'm like, you've heard Hendrix and William Butler Yeats and Howlin' Wolf before? Put together? I don't think so. I'm sorry, respectfully, I don't think so.
But who becomes a critic? What are you doing for a living? You're critic. You know, I learned so much from this show. And one of the things I learned, I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this yesterday, was the incredible yeoman effort it takes to put a record together.
Oh man, yeah.
Just to put it, you got years of practicing and writing and playing, and you got to get everybody together, and you got to get them on the same, and then you got to make the song, you got to engineer it, you got to, you know, master it, mix it. And I never criticize a record after that, because it may not be my cup of tea.
Right. Got it. Yep.
But man, you can't say, hey, this sucks, this is a piece of because it's not to anybody else. There's people, you know, my viewpoint. It's like saying I don't like this particular meal I'm eating. That doesn't mean it sucks. It's awful. You know, it means it's not my thing, man. But I learned that. And so how do you become a critic? Your job is to criticize things. Who the fuck wants to, excuse my, well, who wants to do that for, you know, like I'd rather be saying, man, I really appreciate the work. That just feels better than saying, you know, I don't think the bass track or whatever, you know, so I don't take a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, you go by the majority, not the minority.
And the other part of it that you alluded to at the top is you also have to have people like Patty Patty DeVries and Rick Lusher, who's the radio guy. And you've got to have people like that to help you. Otherwise, it's so hard just to get your record heard and to get it played anywhere, because there's so many records being put out. And like, I wouldn't have had a chance to meet you.
Yeah, if Patty didn't connect.
No, I'm serious. I wouldn't. You know, she's the one that hooked that up. So I'm just thankful that I have good people around me. Seriously, man, you've got to have good, and that more and more is important to me. Like, I know it sounds very.
No, I get it, man. I get it. Believe me, I totally get it, man. I really do. I want to ask you about one more track on there. I really like. You did a cover.
Yeah.
Peter Green song, Supernatural. I was, you know what, man? I thought when I see someone covering Supernatural, I always say to myself,
I know.
You better do a good job, because this is like, and you did a great, awesome cover of it. And I was curious, what made you pick that track? Maybe I know now, because you saw him in so many times. And do you remember the first time you heard it?
Yeah, I do remember the first time I heard it. It was on the record. It was on the Hard Road record with John Mayall. And I remember how distinct the voice was in the guitar. The guitar was literally singing, but it was, although I love the lineage and the history of blues guitar, to me it was a little bit different. Like, it seemed to take it a little further, the amount and degree of sustain that's on the instrument.
Oh, on that track. I mean,
and it really felt like an homage and maybe a recognition, and perhaps even a cry, humanity's cry. But it felt like there was some consciousness that it wasn't called what it's called for no reason.
Supernatural, yeah.
Right.
What guitar did you play on that?
Well, I played 3 different guitars on it, actually. I played a reissue Les Paul Custom Shop that belongs to Ducky.
You had to have a Les Paul on that. Yeah, okay.
That we used for the long sustaining bits. Now, we ran into a problem because Ducky Carlisle lives in a residential neighborhood. His studio is in the basement of his home, and also upstairs where he tracks the drums. But there's a limit to how loud and how long you can be loud. And maybe there is, but we didn't find a way to get that or close to that without being truly loud. I mean, like almost frighteningly loud, because you have to get the guitar and the amp to interact, which is beautiful if you're a fan of that, like we are.
Yeah, but if you're neighbor, maybe not.
But if you're the neighbor, particularly the one who's right there where the amp is, they may not find that as charming or as artistically valid. So what we had to do was I had to add, there were little spots where I added an EBO because we wanted to have the thing have more sustain than we needed. And the neighbor had basically put, no puns intended, a limit on how much we could do. So we found that with the EBO, we could kind of marry the two.
Push it without crank,
without driving anybody, anybody wanting to come.
That makes sense. That's a pretty clever idea, actually.
So, and then some of the solo, not the long sustained thing, but some of the improv is the Les Paul, and some of it is a exotic.
Oh yeah, sure.
XSC.
XOTIC, yeah.
Like a Strat style guitar, California series, really great guitar.
Yeah.
And it's got a humbucker on it.
Yep. I know the
between
guitar
the two,
real well.
yeah, between the two. But it was a lot of Les Paul, basically. But
it's funny. I was just talking to someone yesterday because I got this Strat here. I wanted to buy an HSS.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got
it. What is it?
It's a made in Japan Strat from the mid '90s.
Yeah.
And but I'm not
what
in
company?
love. It's a Fender Strat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And, thanks. And I'm just not. The humbucker sound is really. I bought it because it said it was PAF, but it's either that or the electronics are messed up. It's really bright, and I like a warm.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, the humbucker on the Exotic is one that they make. It's called a raw vintage, and it's beautifully voiced. It's not over distorted. It's not gainy really. It really just sounds like a big single coil, except it doesn't hum.
Yeah, you know what? You're the second person in 2 days. I got to look into that.
It's a really good pickup.
Yeah.
But basically what happened with the track is it's a mountain. It feels like a mountain to climb artistically. And I had serious doubts about whether I was the person who could climb it, and also whether anyone should, for the reasons that you articulated.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just do a mimic of it. That's useless because it's already there and it's brilliant. And I know that people think I've got too much of a green fetish anyway. So I was kind of
not your problem if someone feel,
But I was kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't, But then I guess I took it as a challenge, because it requires a completely different way of playing, at least to my mind. It's not about the number of notes. It's not about, in a weird way, it's not even about the technique. It's about digging deep and can you make a statement with less?
Yeah, that's tone, that whole
and that's hard. That's actually a lot harder than I gave it credit for until I tried to do it. So once I did it, then I checked with a couple of friends who I highly respect. And I said, I'm going to play this for you. And I need you to tell me completely bone honestly, is this full of shit or is this standing up? I don't mean standing up to, I mean, just standing on its own. You asked me basically what led me to want to do the piece. There's lots of layers to this, so I hope it doesn't sound too weird, but one, I didn't know that he was ill, but it turns out it was a nice way to pay homage to him.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one level of it. Another level of it is kind of a rite of passage to play the piece, like it would be to play Django's Tiger, or, in every music there are these rites of passage, things that you've got to at least try.
Sure.
And also, you had asked me earlier if there were dark periods, and I don't want to go too far down into this, but losing my mom was one of those.
Sorry,
and
man.
No, everyone goes through it. But no, I'm saying it by way of, in some cultures, there's a feeling that the spirit of important beings like that, family members, are around, they're available to whatever degree. So, the title of the piece kind of gives it away. Like, maybe it's a reaching out, like, okay, music's allowed me to continue to make music. It's taken pity on me, so to speak. And it's allowed me it's come through me enough so I can offer you this,
Man, that sounds all great. That sounds really beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yeah. But that,
I think if you believe something, like that it's not like if you say I believe the world is flat, I'm not going to say that's true. But I mean, you know, of course.
Isn't there a basketball player that said that?
Oh, there's like a whole cult of people that believe.
Really? Oh, you're kidding me.
No, there's a whole like.
You're kidding me.
No, I wouldn't make this. I couldn't make this up. I wouldn't think of something. But I think if like spiritually, if you believe there's a connection, then there's a connection.
Right.
You know, I think your brain's pretty powerful, and I think that should guide not, you know, all of us on things like that, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great version of the song, and I think you
Brother.
accomplished everything that you wanted to do, and then some, man.
Well, all props to Peter Green.
Oh yeah, man. Remember the first record you ever purchased?
Oh yeah.
What was it?
Oh yeah. My mom, after my Marine dad passed on, my mom hooked up with a guy. Big mistake. Never liked him, never cared for him. And he wasn't too interested in being a stepdad to me. I was just in the way, you know. And I was hitting that spot where you're a teenager and you're rebellious anyway.
Yeah.
And so it was exacerbated. And it gets a lot more serious, and I don't want to go there right now. But bottom line is, one of the good things he did was he bought me a radio. And it was long enough ago that the radio actually looks more like your Delta Blues. It was like that, that size.
Yeah.
So I went down to Radio Shack and I got the biggest antenna I could find. And I threw it out the window of the house that this guy owned. And I stayed in my room a lot because I didn't care for him. I mean, I really didn't care for him. But that led me into exploring the radio, and airwaves are powerful.
Oh yeah, man.
And at that particular time, I was getting like WVON in Chicago. I was getting a station out of Memphis. I think I stumbled into the Hayride, like Louisiana Hayride. But WVON, that was the clincher really, because that's where I first heard Howling Wolf and Muddy Waters. So I went down to my little local record store, and there was this lovely lady with a, you know, kind of silvery hair, very gentle. And I showed her in the catalog, like, this is what I want to order. Oh, sure, it'd be here in, you know, whatever, 2-3 weeks. So I go down there to pick the records up. And I had ordered the best of Muddy Waters on chess. Got this beautiful cover, Don Bronstein photo of Muddy. He looks like the Buddha. Got one little bead of sweat. And then I also ordered Moaning at Midnight by Howling Wolf. And that's got a line drawing of a wolf on it.
Oh, you know, there's a really good documentary. It's like a 5-part. You see that on YouTube of the wolf.
What is it?
It's just look up Howlin' Wolf documentary. It's in 5 parts. He had a horrible life. His mom basically threw him out of the. I mean, and he was just a loving guy. He treated all his employees. I mean, it's a nice story about him.
Sounds like it might have been based on the book. There's a great book.
Yeah, maybe, but it was really nice. I was happy.
I will definitely check it out.
Yeah.
So I go to pick up the record. She's there, and she says, "Where did you hear these records?" They were nothing like what they carried. And she said, "I bet it wasn't on WTIC." And WTIC was from Hartford, Connecticut, and it was middle of the road music, like, no disrespect, but like Andy Williams,
sure,
you know, that kind of thing. I said, "No, ma'am, I heard it on a station out of Chicago." And she was, I think, questioning whether these records were going to be good for me to hear.
That's funny.
Because they look so different. And I remember I put on the Wolf first, and the hairs on my arms stood up. You know, because it actually starts with him moaning, the very first track. And it's eerie as all get out. And then I put on the Muddy, and it was like something opened up in me, like something I knew was there, but I could never access.
Wow.
Just opened, like my heart opened up. And so the next day I said to my mom, you think there's any way we can afford a guitar? Because she was working 2 jobs. I knew that a guitar was going to be a big stretch. At the time, they had these things called green stamps.
Yeah, S&H, man. I remember
Bingo.
those.
Yeah.
So you used to go down to the store. Yeah. They had whole stores. You go down there and I got 10,000 stamps.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a blender or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So that's how I got my first guitar. And it was a nylon string guitar. I wish I still had it. It was a sweet guitar. It was almost completely unplayable. But
yeah, that's what everybody's first guitar is like.
And I would just sleep with it. I would just hug it because I didn't know how to play it. I mean, plus it was tough to play. But those are the first 2 records I ever bought.
That's pretty cool of your mom.
Those, oh, unbelievably cool.
Yeah.
I mean, my God. But my mother could be brutal too. Now, in that period where we were talking about staying in my room and learning shit, so I went through these T-Bone Walker records. One of my favorites was T-Bone Blues, that album. Like learning every nuance of the guitar on that record. And she came in while I was doing it. She's like, aren't there already people who can do this?
Oh.
And she was right. No, but she was right. That was the thing. She was actually right. Like, yes, it's true. You know, like Duke Robillard nailed it, you know, or, you know, whoever you want to name. It's like, but he's one of the foremost ones. He can do that stuff backwards, forwards, and sideways. I mean, he's brilliant. So she was right. But what it made me learn was I need to try to find my own way with this.
Yeah.
My own path. Like learn it, but try to find an identity with it that respects it and honors it, but it's still me. I think that's what she meant. Like not to only mimic it, but to try to take it somewhere if you could.
Sure.
Not that it needs taking anywhere. You know what I mean?
No, but I get, yeah, but you don't have to.
I don't mean that in a big-headed way. It's more like, you know, it's like.
No, find your own voice.
Bingo. Right.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
But yeah, she could be bone honest, as they say. And but that was good for me. You know, because I might have just stayed there. I might have just been, you know, I like how that sounds, you know, I like, you know, could have just been this, you know, but.
Tell me, no particular order and just for right now, this moment, top 3 Desert Island discs.
Oh God, the first 2 I named.
Okay, Howlin' and Muddy.
I'm a big fan of Blues is King by B.B. King, live record. But I can't keep it to 3, man. We'll be here all day.
No, you got it. That's it. It's 3. That's it.
All right.
Peter, best decision you ever made?
To be involved with music, to let music come through me. Best decision ever.
I like how you.
Many of my friends ended up in very bad places because the music wasn't their guide. Other things were their guide. Following the music was definitely a very, very good decision.
Yeah, I like how
because it required certain things. And that kept me out of other things.
Gotcha.
Definitely a good thing.
Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
Oh, when my mother came to my record release party at the Regatta Bar.
Oh, that's cool, man.
She danced. There's nothing like a Sicilian dancing, brother.
That's nice, man. Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
Yeah. Yeah. I like tennis. I like baseball. I used to play baseball. I like to write. I mean, other than songs.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're a reader, because most writers are big readers.
I love to read.
Yeah.
I love to read. And I also love film. And I love photography.
Yeah, I love photography too, man. What kind of photography do you like to shoot?
I don't shoot it. Actually, my wife does. I'm a big fan, actually, of black and white.
Yeah. Man, I go to the city and I do street for some reason, I have a hard time doing it anywhere outside of New York. But I shoot tons of black and white street photography. When you go to the city, it's just like an infinite.
Yeah.
You know,
the landscape is perfect.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
The people there and just it's
absolutely,
awesome.
Man. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Toughest decision you've ever had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Oh boy. Had some difficult decisions with my family. Very difficult decisions. And those I think I want to keep to myself.
Yeah, you can leave it at that for sure, man. Yeah. That's totally cool. Two more questions, man, and I can't thank you enough for being so cool and open.
Oh man, thank you. I'm seriously honored to be here.
Same here, man. It's all good. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional, and how much is just a natural part of aging?
I think you might have asked Denny something like this.
Denny Freeman?
Yeah, I love him. Oh my God, what an amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
Seems like a beautiful guy too. Biggest change. My heart was closed for a while, and it's opening up again.
That's awesome, man.
And so therefore, I think sometimes folks think I'm distant. It's really that I'm not distant, but I feel like I'm warmer than I've been, which is a good thing.
Good for you, man. That's really good that your heart's opening up again, man. Yeah, life's fucking tough.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. It is. It's really tough.
Yeah. Well, good for you that you're open to that, man. I'm happy for you. Good things are going to happen.
I hope so.
As you know.
Yeah.
And this might be related, but last question is, what's the most important lesson life or your business has taught you?
Be who you are. Be real. Come from your heart.
Man, that is
follow the music. If music is what you do, follow the music. The music comes first, and it will guide you. It will never guide you wrong. Somebody else might guide you wrong, but that music will not guide you wrong. If you go with it, you will be literally going with God.
Great way to end this interview, man. Let me tell people how to find you. Peter's got 4 records out. His last one is Mississippi Suitcase. Great record. My favorites are The World is Upside Down, The Supernatural. It's got a bunch of cool tunes on there. I would love you to check out his music. It's available on Amazon and everywhere you'd find music. Any word on gigs on your end?
I'm hopeful that it'll be safe enough to tour sometime, whether 2021 or 2022. I'd love to go to the UK. I'd love to go to Holland. I'd love to go to France. Love to go to Germany again. And obviously, I'd love to be able to play in the United States. I don't know when it's going to be safe enough.
I know, man. It's a crazy world we're living in now. There's never been so much uncertainty about tomorrow even. Yeah. You know, as nutty as people are, I'm amazed people are keeping their shit together that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hope that we all can find a place where we can, even if we disagree, where we can agree to take care of one another.
Yeah, man. Just be nice.
Exactly. And do what we need to do to save each other and to save our planet. Because this has been given to us. It's literally a miracle.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you 100%.
And I'm thankful that music is what I get to do, because music is kind of a miracle too.
Well, you do it well, and I'm thankful that that's what you do as well, man. Keep it up.
Well, let's play sometime, man. All right.
I'll be that guy I'll be that guy.
No. Let's play sometime. Come on.
Well, by the time we're allowed to go out, I'll probably be confident enough to play. So I'll say yes. How's that?
Oh, you don't. It's not about. Yeah, don't worry about any of that.
I'm one of these guys that like sits in his house and plays, and I need to get out. You said something today that actually helped me out when we were talking about. I said to you, "How did you get your confidence back?" And I didn't realize that, but I actually asked that question for me. Right. And when you said, man, there's never a good time. It's like anything else. And I've done so many things in my life, like business and like entrepreneur and having a family. There's never a good time. You just do it and you let the music come out naturally and it'll work. And so that helped me out a lot. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll play.
Please do. Please do.
Peter, thank you so much for everything, man.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, man, very much. Let me wrap this up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels with your friends. We definitely appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Peter Parcek. Please check his music out. His last name, it's peterparcek.com, correct?
PeterParcekBand.com. Yeah.
It's Peter, P-A-R-C-E-K band.com. New record is Mississippi Suitcase, available everywhere. Please check it out. You will be pleasantly surprised and get some very good vibes off that. And most important, man, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play a guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Thank you so much for everything, brother.